Hello, my name is Kara Schabacher. I am also nervous, but I was assured that if I passed out or threw up, someone out there would know how to help me. So be ready. I've got kind of a sharp curve here, so hopefully nothing traumatic happens. As you can probably already tell, I'm a bit of a rambler, so instead of going with kind of a freewheeling way of doing this, I wrote it down perfectly so I wouldn't overdo my time. So I apologize now that I will be looking at this paper most of the time. Hopefully you can find interest in the slides that I chose. So I've been doing massage for the last 10 years. It only took about 3 months of doing that to realize that it didn't do very much. And it was very hard work for me, and I wasn't getting very far. So I started getting into the myofascial aspect of the work. I've been focusing on fascia for the last 9 years, and I've just become more and more and more passionate about it with every single person that I treat, because it's just pretty superior to a lot of other forms of body work. So what I'm going to be talking about today in very simple terms is what the fascia is and what it's not, what goes wrong within the tissue and what symptoms that may cause, how to address these symptoms either by professional treatment or through practicing self-care, along with some real-life success stories, as well as touching upon why client, patient, and practitioner education is so incredibly important. So as Dr. Finley mentioned, there was really no way for me to ignore this because it was kind of crushing the egos of so many of us that have been studying this for a long time. So this is a very, very unique and critical time in history to be having these conversations due to the recent discoveries and acknowledgments of what scientists are now touting as an important breakthrough, a possible new organ called the interstitium. Now the wording here is a bit misleading. This is no new organ. This is the fascia. It's just so much different in reality than what science and medicine ever believed it to be. What's new about it is the way that we are able to see it now, a visual aid to accompany what those of us who have been putting hands to bodies have been feeling for a very long time. So why has it taken our biggest and brightest minds so long to catch up? Scientists say that it is the way it had been previously studied. But let's back it up a little bit. Before this new discovery, we still were aware that the fascia existed as a full body system, but its importance was mostly ignored. Why? Well, let's start with the living. It is helpful to note that myofascial restrictions do not show up in X-rays, CAT scans, myelograms, or electromyography tests, which means a lot of people in pain are being disregarded because there's no proof of anything being wrong. Now, it doesn't take someone of extreme intelligence to see the flaw in that system, but it doesn't exactly offer up a solution either. Without understanding the true nature of this tissue, many of us have been left with more questions than answers. Now, on to the dead. Up until fairly recently, studies were done solely on cadavers. The tissue was drained of fluid, collapsing the latticework into something that looked crackly and dense. Structurally, the tissue was completely changed and all water was lost. Once they were able to look at live tissue, the paradigm shifted and brought us to where we are right now, which, according to those who are part of this particular study, is at the very beginning of trying to understand the significance of this tissue and how to work with it. Lucky for them, there have been many before them who have studied this tissue intensively, and a few who have devoted their entire lives to figuring it out. One of those few is my personal mentor, and the mentor to more than 100,000 others, John F. Barnes, who has spent the last 5 decades teaching all that science has just confirmed and light years beyond it. Most of what I will be talking about during this presentation is what I have learned from his teaching and his unprecedented contribution to this field of study. So, what it is and what it's not. Contrary to this image still common in anatomy books, fascia is not partitioned into clear-cut layers stacked like fleshy lasagna within the body. Instead, it's a three-dimensional web of tissue that is alive and constantly changing. The New York University School of Medicine describes it as a highway of moving fluid, something that ebbs and flows like the ocean. Picture it like an all-pervasive spider web that surrounds, infuses with, and has the potential to influence and be influenced by every muscle, bone, nerve, blood vessel, organ, and cell of the body. It separates, supports, connects, and protects everything, and acts as our shock absorber and defense mechanism. So what goes wrong? In response to stress, injury, surgery, poor posture, etc., the fascia can tighten, twist, shorten, and reorganize along lines of tension, adding support to misalignment, all the while changing from a flexible, viscous liquid to a rigid and brittle solid. Over time, this creeping sprawl of connective tissue can become an internal straitjacket, dampening down important functions such as flexibility, resiliency, range of motion, and blood flow, while creating symptoms such as shortness of breath, dizziness, anxiety, lack of energy, lack of sleep, and so many others. Myofascial work has been unmatched in treating back pain, headaches and migraines, whiplash, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, carpal tunnel and TMJ disorder, sciatica, menstrual pain, incontinence, and painful scars, as well as some mental and emotional struggles. Honestly, this list could read as long as the side effects on a prescription drug commercial, only this time, along with a pretty picture, we get some positive news. But how do we fix it? First, let me explain the foundational principles of this work, which are quite basic for such a complex and intelligent system. I've broken it down into three basic rules. One, this is crazy, okay? Treat the individual as an individual. I know that's such a wild concept sometimes. The fascia creates a different pattern in every person, every day, every moment. There is no generic treatment formula for back pain. I have to repeat that. There is no generic treatment formula for back pain. My body, pain, and history are only mine. And to think I can be treated as if I were a cog in a machine is ineffective, lazy medicine. Rule number 2, do not force. The fascia is a protective mechanism that started the tightening down process on purpose to protect damaged, inflamed, or otherwise compromised tissue from more damage, and is smart enough to know the difference between healing and hurting pain. Much like the roots of a tree, it is ready to stiffen up and send a distress call when it feels it may be under attack. So instead of waging war on the tissues by trying to force an unforceable system, the fascia is gently taken to its depth barrier, which is the place where the tissue willingly pulls you in, but not past it. Given consistent time and pressure, the fascia unspools like pulled taffy, restoring its flexibility and rehydrating the tissue. Rule number 3 is the time factor. For the fascia to relax and rehydrate, the appropriate amount of time is absolutely necessary. A deep and lasting release won't even start until gentle pressure has been sustained for 90 to 120 seconds, not reaching full potential of pliability until up to 3 to 5 minutes or longer. This has to do with something called the viscous flow phenomenon, which is when a low load or gentle pressure applied slowly will allow a viscoelastic medium, such as the fascia, to elongate. So basically this is how I feel when I'm doing my job, a nice visual of me at work. Following just these simple principles, I've been able to help an old dog in his last week of life run again with his little puppy brother just by giving a tail pull for 15 minutes. And dogs love this, by the way. Cats, never, but dogs, so good, so good. I've also been able to help 2 babies, one 4 months and 5 months, the other one 5 months old, roll over on their own for the very first time just by locating, little hitches in their shoulders that probably started sometime while they were inside of their mothers. Most recently, I was able to work with a woman, just one treatment for 90 minutes, where we were able to stop her headaches for 2 months. She was having them every single day. She was actually signed up to receive 31 shots of Botox the next week and had to cancel it, or got to cancel it, because she didn't need it anymore. Those are just a few, and those are obviously pretty amazing just on their own. The stories that aren't mine extend to bringing lame horses back to full health, dissolving cysts and tumors to indefinitely postpone surgery, and eliminating chronic pain. A majority of those that end up on my table have already tried everything else and look at me like some sort of last resort witch doctor that's going to voodoo their bodies into healing. And these aren't just some casual crazies you can sweep under the rug. These are Fortune 500 CEOs, MVPs of professional athletic teams, top-tier lawyers and doctors. These are members of big pharma who want to avoid having to rely on their own medicine. These are surgeons and nurses who never knew the importance of the tissue they were cutting up and throwing away. These are the elites looking for the best, and they finally find relief in myofascial work. Now, with this part of the story, half of the crowd is enthusiastic and lining up for their miracle, while the other half is skeptical and ready to hit me with some of the harder questions. I am prepared for you. One of which being, once a person has received this work, how long does the miracle last? Well, I'm glad that I'm pretending that you asked, because this next part is so very important. For some, it really can be as simple as coming in for a treatment or two and letting the therapist fix them. But for the majority of us, learning how our bodies truly function and how to take care of them is more about a conscious lifestyle change than it is about 60 minutes on somebody's table. The truth is, real health is never going to be a quick fix or a one-time use experience, or something that can be attained by a pill or surgery or one serving of vegetables and a run around the block. In a culture that has been raised on the belief that bigger, faster, stronger, tougher is invariably the way to success, our innate inner knowing of how our body heals has been clouded, and we've handed over this power of knowing to the authorities, to people outside of ourselves, leaving us completely out of touch. But having this knowledge as a patient as well as a practitioner is an absolute necessity. Now, of course, it is undeniably important that these authorities exist. Without pills, without medicine, without science and surgery, life might still look like a game of Oregon Trail, with most of us dying at age 19 of dysentery. We have truly come a long way. Modern medicine and the people who devote their lives to individual aspects of health are vital to the health of the whole, just as taking care of our water, our forests, and our wildlife each matter to the overall health of the planet. It is an absolute necessity to understand the pieces to understand the whole. But as Dr. Banias, who is one of the men behind these recent studies, states, a lot of research happens in a bubble. People miss the forest for the trees. To know that a human being can never truly be fragmented is an adult knowledge, and it is just as important to understand the whole to learn how to fix the pieces. In myofascial work, we look not only to the body, but the mind, the emotional content, the movement, the texture of the tissue, and overall energy that each person brings with them. And above all, we recognize that we are working with a conscious, intelligent human being, an outward expression of an internal network of communication and self-awareness. We look at symptoms as their true definition. They are indicators and signals, the effect of the cause, not the cause themselves. Understanding that putting a Band-Aid over that symptom by administering a pill or a needle right out of the gate is the same as blindfolding ourselves to the possibility of long-term healing. Those of us who devote our lives to this work have a responsibility to remove our heads from the sand and recognize how everything connects, influences, and is influenced by everything else, and there is no better teacher of that lesson than the fascia. So let me end with a quote by the man who invented the 20th century, Nikola Tesla. "The day that science begins to study the non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." Thank you.